Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over the data from my first time out at the track and going over what we need to change for the next time, and just looking it over, seeing if we can find any problems or anything like that. So I'm going to make some data overlay videos of the passes. Everybody seems to like those, and I do too. I like watching them over and over again, watching how stuff works and seeing where things can be improved on, and just it's cool to watch how fast everything happens during the pass. So I'm going to show you those right now, and then I will get into the data afterwards. I'm just going to show the second and third pass because I don't think anybody has time to watch that whole first pass on 5 psi. So yeah, there they are. Alright, so there you guys go. Now we're going to take a little deeper look into the data and look at the actual data log. And I'm just going to show some things here, not going to quite show everything, but this is the second pass there where it was the 5.8 at 120, the cleanest pass that I had and fastest pass. So yeah, let's look over this stuff and see what we can learn. So one thing that I had mentioned in the last video was the boost control issue. So let's go ahead and pull some of this stuff off of here and look over that a little closer. So as you can see, let's take the target boost off of there as well. So here you can see our boost. You can see also this right here, if you're confused by that. Holley V6, you can have a RPM limiter offset based off of whatever you want it to be based off of, but I have it based off of boost pressure. So you'll see here, you can also see the dump valves here. This is 100%, meaning they're open. So this is when I'm trying to get spooled up. The log started here because the log, I have it set for like 45 seconds, and it caught the beginning of this at the end of the burnout log and then started it right here. So that's why it did that, but I have it starting the log at I think like 50% TPS, and this is just using the Dominator onboard logging. But anyways, you can see I have the RPM coming up above the actual RPM I want to leave at in order to help it build boost faster. And as you can see, boost right here, it comes up pretty quickly whenever it is up like that, and then it kind of climbs slowly once it's actually up or down to the lower two-step. So I can definitely make some improvement on that. I would like to, and I did make some improvement on that on the second pass. I'd like to have boost come up and then just be flat, and then just stay right at my target launch boost until I leave the line. That way there's no different boost based on when I leave. For example, if I left earlier here, I would leave on a pound less boost. So that's something that I'm going to be working on as I learn the car and learn the setup. But yeah, you can see I have it coming up. I believe it's 600 RPM over the limiter. So the limiter was set at 4,900 here, and then at 6 psi I have it starting to drop down, and 7 psi is where it's all the way down to the regular limiter, which was at 4,300 RPM, I believe, for this pass. So there we go. We left at 4,300 and just under 9 pounds. And as you can see, boost was kind of all over the place on the run. I varied in between. I think the lowest point out here is like 13 pounds, and the highest about 16, almost 17 pounds. So that is an issue there, and I'll show you why that issue is happening. So we'll pull up the target boost. So the target boost is not actual target boost, even though that is a little bit confusing there. It's target dome pressure. So we will pull up the dome pressure sensor here, and as you can see, there is our issue on the boost jumping around like that. So as you can see, it wasn't too much of an issue here on the trans brake, although it was still spiking around, but it stayed a lot closer, and it was not quite as bad. But as we made the pass, it got quite a bit worse. It was jumping all around. I believe that may have been from vibrations. It's just the cheap low dollar sensor. They have another one that's a little bit higher end that's better and suited for dome pressure. This one originally wasn't supposed to be dome pressure, but my Holly dome pressure sensor failed, so I swapped it in there, and it did work better than the Holly one because the Holly one completely failed, but we're still having some issues. I believe it's more vibration related than anything, causing it to read wrong, because as you can see on the pass, it's much worse, and then after I lift, it's much closer and not as erratic. So we're going to fix that. We'll see how I end up fixing that. Low Dollar did actually send me another sensor, the higher quality one, to replace that with, but it's not going to be here in time for this weekend. So I'm going to figure something out with that. I think I have, well, I do have an extra 5-bar map sensor. I might try and toss that in there and see if that'll work for me. Because 5-bar map sensor will read to 58 psi, and I definitely don't need 58 pounds of dome pressure anytime soon. So should be able to figure out something for this weekend. Yeah. So let's see, what else is there to look at? You can tell that the car spun there in that video a little bit. You can hear the tires squeal, and you can see it here even if you just look at the RPM graph. You can see this spike here, and then it dips down, and then you can see a couple spikes here as well. So both of those are indications that it could have spun, but it's not a perfect way of knowing by just looking at the engine RPM. But luckily we have drive shaft RPM here, which you can also see this is a little bit erratic, especially down here. Like I would expect it to possibly be a little erratic down here, where the car could be, losing and gaining traction a little bit, like it did right here on this spike. But down track, there's really no way it was spinning like that. So I believe, or especially down here on D-cell, it's still kind of spiky there. So I think I just have the gap a little bit off on that. It is it's a Davis sensor, 32 tooth wheel, and it says to gap it at 30 thousandths, and I believe I ended up just over that. So I will tighten that up a little bit, and we should be good to go on that. But it still gave us some good data. As you can see here, you can see where it spun early in the run, and you can see with boost time here, that's what I like to use to see how far I was into the run, since the boost time will start when the trans brake was released. You can see it was just about 1 second into the run, or actually just before 1 second. It was actually about a little over half a second into the run is where it started to spin, it looks like. And you can see I didn't have to lift. I kept the TPS at 100% there. I did dip a little bit here, which is probably just me getting pulled slightly off the pedal whenever I let off the trans brake. So I just need to keep my foot a little bit farther down there, but not really an issue. Yeah, you can see it's kind of came up here, and you can tell it was spinning, and then you can see right around when RPM also drops, the drive shaft RPM drops back down. This is where it hooked back up and starts climbing normally, until you see right here there's a little spike right there, and you can see there's a spike in the RPM as well. That's where it spun for just a split second there. It was more than likely hitting a bump or something. In fact, we can look at the shock data, and I bet you we may be able to see something there. So yep, you can see there was a bump right about there, and that was more than likely what caused that. So there's a bump there, and it looks like there's another bump right around there, and that's what caused those two little blips there. So it's nice to have that data. Shout out to Low Dollar for those awesome sensors. Yeah, we can also see, looking at the rear shock data here, we can see how much it's separated. So I have the shock, I just have it set at the travel of the sensor. So the sensor is at 2.24 inches of travel here. I have the front right here, as you can see, set up to where it goes off the actual travel of the wheel throughout the travel of the suspension. So I didn't do that with the rear, just because the rear is going to vary some more, because I'll probably move weight around and stuff like that, or put more or less weight in the back, but the front should stay pretty close to the same. So anyways, you can see it was at 2.2 inches here while I'm sitting on the trans brake, and then let's see the peak right here, 4.5 inches. So that shows us that it's separated just over 2 inches. So that's not bad. However, I do think we can make some changes and get it to separate quicker. So I want some more separation right off the hit and right here. I feel like that may help keep it planted through this area where it spun on this pass, and it also spun on the next pass. As you've seen, this pass it was able to recover, the next pass it wasn't. Part of that issue though was the boost not doing exactly what I wanted it to. So as you can see, this was our target here. I wanted it to kind of smoothly come up, and then it should have kind of rolled over right around here, around 1.25 seconds. And due to the dome pressure reading, it kind of spiked there and came down and just acted a little funny. So I think that played a part in upsetting the chassis. Also, you can see where I figured out that I am an idiot and set the front struts differently. So as you can see here, this front right shock, we are only just about 3/10 of a second into the run, and or even earlier than that, yeah, just a quarter of a second into the run, or just before that, we're already at 1 inch of travel on the front right shock. So that came up really quickly, but then you can see where it just stopped right there, and then it kind of came up after that, but not a lot. This is another thing that upset it and caused it to spin, or probably the main factor. Like if I had the front shocks, front struts set properly, then it wouldn't have spun there. I'm about 95% sure. But yeah, the reason that this came up like this is the front right shock, and I had the front right full loose on rebound because I forgot to set it, and then I had the front left full tight on rebound. So that was my bad there. I wanted them somewhere more in the middle, which I ended up doing for the next pass. But as you can see, since this one was full loose, it came right up until the rest of the car wasn't coming up because the left was full tight, and then it just kind of stayed right around there and wasn't really too happy looking. And the front end, my total travel, which I didn't have the travel limiters on it, is 4.75 inches. So as you can see, we were nowhere near full travel. That's just because I had that other shock too tight. But anyways, let's before we leave this one, let's look at how the converter is acting by looking at the RPM. So as you can see, we don't get to see the coupling point here real well because it's spun there, so it kind of throws that data off a little bit. It's more than likely not going to actually dip down like this. It's going to be just a smooth kind of roll over and then climb. But due to that spin, it kind of came up and then dropped back down some, but still it is coming off the brake pretty smoothly there. There's no quick spike or anything like that. So pretty happy with that. And also you can see the highest that we got to on the kind of the flash there of the converter. That's probably kind of a false data point right there just because of the spin a little bit. But flashed roughly 6,000 to 6,200 RPM there on that around 15 pounds of boost. And then we'll go up here and look at the shift point. We shifted just over 7,900. And you can see 7,923 was the highest RPM we hit. And then we'll look down here at where it dropped. That's a very important piece on the stock bottom end stuff, of course, because if you have it dropping down too low of RPM, it's going to make a lot more torque, which is a lot more cylinder pressure, which is going to lift heads, bend rods, and all that stuff. It's really not a concern on this low of boost, but we still want to look at it here because as I add boost, it's going to get looser and it's going to flash higher and higher. So I can kind of look here and see, if it's acting, a certain way here, I know that at a higher boost level, it's going to be roughly where it needs to be. And based off of the data that we have so far, I think it's going to be really close to where it needs to be. I may still end up making a change on the converter. And I also still have the dumps that I can use. As you can see, I have the dumps closed once I get to 7 pounds of boost here on the trans brake, and I don't have them open at any time during the run. So I still have those to use as well if I need. But yeah, it dropped to 6260 there, which is I'm really happy with that. My old combo on the same amount of boost dropped to like 5200. So with this new Hughes converter, we're roughly 1,000 RPM looser at this point, which if it stays 1,000 RPM looser across the whole power band, across the whole as we turn it up, then I'll be pretty happy with that because the old converter dropped to 6,700 RPM when I was at just under 40 pounds of boost. So if we could drop it to 7,700 and just shift this thing up closer to 9,000 RPM or so, then I would be pretty happy with that. Honestly, I would be happy with it being a little bit looser than that, which it may be. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this data log. So let's look at the last pass where we spun. So as you can see, I turned it up a little bit here, and you can also see that I did a little bit better of a job with the boost on the brake here. It wasn't continuously climbing really. Once it got to about my target, so it got to 11 pounds there. You can see, let's see how far in. So this is about a second right here, and it stayed right around 11 pounds. You know, only changed just a little bit. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's how I want it to be, so I can have consistent consistent data and to go off of, and consistent boost to leave on, so that way I'm not having to just leave right when I see a boost number or something like that. But yeah, we'll also look at the suspension here after I fixed it. As you can see, let's go to about a quarter of a second into the run like the last one. This one was not quite an inch. It was 3/4 of an inch, whereas the other log was 1 inch. Had to reset my camera there, sorry. As you can see, we've got about 3/4 of an inch of travel, but on the last log, it got to about an inch there, and then it leveled off, as you've seen, and then just was kind of upset after that. This one, as you can see, it continued climbing until eventually the car just spun so bad that it lost acceleration, and the front end came back down. And the front end came back down due to just it not accelerating and transferring the weight. So, but you can see we did get up to about 2.5 inches of front suspension travel, and based off of this data, I would loosen them up, probably 3 or 4 more clicks, just so we can get some more travel quicker, since we do have almost 5 inches of travel. I'd probably like to be at 5 inches on this kind of surface, probably 1.5 seconds in or so, which it's hard to say if it would have made it there or not. It may have, but we spun the tire, as you can see here, this green line. Let me take my target boost, take some of this stuff off of here so we can see a little bit better. So as you can see, the drive shaft, we lost the tire right around here, right around half a second into the run, and you can see boost was just under 20 pounds right there. So left on about 11 pounds, 4,400 RPM, and it just came up much quicker than I wanted it to, and that was once again due to the dome pressure issue. As you can see, my target was a pretty slow ramp. I don't like that I did this right here. Normally I won't do that. I'm not exactly sure why I just ended up leaving that like that, probably got in a rush, but normally I like to have my dome pressure or my target on the gate the same as 0.0. That way there's no spike right here for the boost control to try to chase. Sometimes that can cause a little bit of issues, but I don't think that really was going to save it here. As you can see, dome pressure was still kind of all over the place here. Oh, let's pull that back off of there. And then, yeah, I lost the tire right there, and it did shift a second, as you can see by this spike right here, right after I let off in the drive shaft RPM. And yeah, then I got back in it here, and you can see it spiked about 28 pounds of boost due to just overshooting. And that was once again dome pressure related, and I didn't have my boost cut very high just because I didn't want to really lean on it that hard. But some good things from this data that we got right here where this boost spike happened is the RPM that it actually shot up to. You can see it shot up to about 7,400 RPM here. So that kind of gives us an idea of where the converter is going to flash with that kind of boost. It's probably going to be right around 7,400 RPM or so. So that's really nice to see that it's significantly looser than before with that amount of boost. So I think this thing's going to work really well. And yeah, as you can see, the drive shaft stayed hooked up here, but we hit the boost cut and the boost just dropped down to wastegate because that was a revert to wastegate safety. Also, we can look at the rear suspension here. I think this is part of the issue of it spinning. I think we need some more anti-squat, so I set it a little bit on the conservative side because the car just has some standard Viking Warrior shocks on the back right now, and I know they can't control a lot of separation. So I ended up setting it lower than I wanted to, but I think I'm going to end up, well, I am going to end up lowering the rear of the lower control arm so I can get some more bar angle in the bottom, get some more anti-squat, and see if we can get it to stay hooked up a little bit better. And I'll probably end up tightening the rebound setting as well, so it will maybe not. The biggest thing that I'm concerned about with adding more anti-squat is having it top out the shock in the rear, because whenever you separate really hard and then top the shock out, it all of a sudden is going to, of course, stop separating, which is more than likely going to, or it can cause it to spin, especially if it happens pretty early in the run, because it's going to upset the chassis having a quick change like that. So that's what I want to avoid, but I think we can get away with some more, and we still have some room to go on rebound on tightening it. So we will try that for the next time. Fix the dome pressure, and I think that pretty much covers it. The fueling as well, I need to make some minor changes. I didn't put the closed loop or anything on here, but as you can see, the target and the actual AFR up here. So it was a little bit rich, and it was pulling some fuel in order to get where I wanted it to be. Pulled it was quite a bit rich right there, as you can see, but that's exactly how I wanted it to be. I wanted to be on the rich side, which I believe I ended up around 10 to 15% rich in most places on the fuel map, so nothing wrong with that. I'll probably pull it back so I'm maybe 5% rich or so, and then we'll take it out the next time and see what we can do. So anyways, I'm gonna get the dome pressure fixed, make the suspension changes. I have a few things on the car that need to be touched up. I'm going to put my coolant, my freeze plug block offs that keep the freeze plugs from getting pushed out if I build a lot of coolant pressure from lifting a head or something. I'm going to put those in so that way I'm not worried about that. Then I need to change the front seal. It was leaking a little bit of oil, and yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I know it was a long video, but figured maybe you guys would enjoy a deeper look into this data. So anyways, we will see you guys in the next video at the track, getting some more data and seeing if we can get this thing to go a little bit faster. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.